Guide to get the International Certificate of the Open Ed Project. Maybe you have wondered why it is an international certificate from the Open Ed Project important. The International Certificate of the Open Ed Program is awarded by the WUN Network and the UNESCO Open Educational Movement Share for Latin America. It is a certificate that enriches the educational trajectory of people through sharing good practices and projecting alternative solutions, which encourages updating to endorse the knowledge, skills, aptitudes, and abilities that allow a training committed to the common good. What are the steps I must follow to obtain the Open Ed Project International Certificate? Step 1. Initial and final survey. The initial survey was shared in the first webinar and will continue to be shared via email and the website. The final survey will be shared days before the last webinar via email and our platforms. Step 2. Attendance record. Participation must be recorded in the forms that are shared regularly in each webinar. It is necessary to attend at least 8 webinars to qualify for the Open Ed Project International Certificate. Step 3. 3 questions per webinar. During each webinar, 3 questions integrated into the attendance record will be shared. Where do I get the attendance record? In the description of each webinar, you will find the attendance records. If you cannot find the attendance record below the video description, we recommend that you visit our website www.wununesco.world, where you will also find the initial survey on the homepage. Then you enter where it says schedule and check the presentations down below, where you will find a red button that will redirect you to the attendance record. We invite you to follow us on our social networks to find out about our weekly updates.
Welcome everyone, and we are pleased to have you once again here and to receive Professor Bever for another opportunity to learn from her experience that brings new ways of approach and action for inclusion. So today, on the 4th webinar, she will be presenting the conference called The Use of Open Educational Access Publishing Platforms to Create eBooks for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. As I shared with you last week, Dr. Bever has a master's in library science and a PhD in education. She is Canada Council Research Chair, Tier 2 in Deaf Education, Faculty of Education in the University of Alberta in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Dr. Bever is a researcher in bilingual bimodal deaf education, sign and spoken languages. Her areas of interest include arts-based language and literacy, multimodal literacy, visual literacy, and intercultural pedagogy. She has designed and created ebooks for deaf and hard of hearing students. Today, it is a pleasure for all of us to welcome back Professor Bever and to learn from you. Welcome back, Professor.
Thank you, everyone. I just am so pleased to be here again. I feel honored to have a second chance at a presentation here at the WUN seminars. Last week's presentation was more theoretical, and this one will be a little bit more practical in terms of creating ebooks. We're going to focus specifically on ebooks created through the PressBooks platform. That platform I am going to use with my specific research at the University of Alberta. I've been working with our library system and our library professionals at the University of Alberta, and we at U of A have PressBooks, and I'm going to sign it this way for anyone who's deaf and watching sign language, PB. So we at the University of Alberta have PressBooks as one of our platforms. And so I'm doing some more research about how effective it is for creating ebooks for deaf and hard of hearing learners. And because it's open access, PressBooks is, I thought that it would be the best way to go. I do want to acknowledge Michelle Braley from Library Publishing Services at the University of Alberta. She has been really supportive of my work in this area and in putting together some of what I prepared for you today. So we'll go ahead and start with the pre-recorded lecture I've got here. No. Are others hearing it? Because we're not hearing it on this end, but Dr. Weber can't hear it anyway. Is it something on Dr. Weber's end that the volume is not working, or is it something in the streaming? I'll stop it now, Dr. Weber is saying, so that we can figure out the volume. I guess we didn't test that part earlier. I apologize. I'm not sure what the technical problem is with the sound. I'm sharing my screen. I can hear it on my own computer enough. I'm just not sure why it's not transmitting. Monsat or Julie? Is the volume up? I see that in the chat. Yes, the volume is up. Should I try again? It is a YouTube video, yes. It is a YouTube video, and I'm just playing it by sharing my screen. Is a microphone on? You see it here? It's open. Okay, I think I know what the problem is, she's saying.
To create ebooks for deaf learners. There are a number of points I wish to cover. First, I will do a quick review of the research-based design principles. Next, we'll look at the planning pathway for ebook creation using what's currently available on open educational resource platforms. I'll show you a sample of activities from an ebook I am constructing. Feel free to access the material and follow along using the link provided on the slide. The ebook provides a number of different examples of features that can be incorporated into ebook creation and design. Finally, I'll discuss future considerations to support efforts to create open educational resources for deaf learners. Last week, I introduced a new frame for ebook creation and design. This week, we'll explore whether PressBooks is able to support the production of ebooks using this framework as the guide. So why did I choose PressBooks? It is not hardware dependent. It will work on both Mac and Windows products because PressBooks is an internet-based platform. PressBooks is managed by universities, libraries, organizations, and individuals. PressBooks disseminates OER free to the end users. It is funded through fees paid by universities, libraries, and organizations. Perhaps some individuals do pay, but the users, those who access, watch, and learn from the OER materials developed through PressBooks, do not pay. It is open access to the public. PressBooks has an impressive number of features conducive to effective ebook creation. PressBooks actively supports the development and the creation of open educational resources. Their design principles include universal design principles. PressBooks allows for a quick startup with minimal training. I found it intuitive and user-friendly. PressBooks is very compatible with YouTube-created content. This is particularly beneficial for creating resources for deaf learners, which rely heavily on video content, including creating and sharing video content. Remember, video is the deaf learner's paper. PressBooks works beautifully with YouTube. PressBooks accommodates multimodal resources such as images, video, text, and audio. Rollout and distribution of content is easy, including the option to share sections of a product and hold back others. PressBooks makes the distribution phase easy for the creator. I created an ebook using the proposed new framework I presented last week. I wanted to determine whether PressBooks could indeed incorporate the instructional elements defined in the new framework. I chose to create an ebook teaching the digestive system. I wanted to choose a neutral, non-political subject. All of us have bodies that digest food, so that seemed neutral enough. I felt it was important to demonstrate pedagogical design features and not get sidetracked by potentially controversial content. At the heart of the design is visuocentric learning, incorporating our understanding of deaf aesthetics, multimodal design, and finally the ebook layout. It is important for the success of the design to carefully analyze the relationship between the written text, images, and videos. These relationships are at the heart of visuocentric design. At this point, I would like to go into level 1 accessibility in more detail and how this level applies to ebook design for deaf learners. The audio-centric biosocial portal emphasizes text. You can see on this slide evidence of this perspective. See how the interpreters are relegated to a very small frame. There are 2 interpreters. One is interpreting into American Sign Language, ASL, and the other one is interpreting into Quebec Sign Language, LSQ. The main presenter occupies the most space on the screen. Clearly, this is an audio-centric presentation of the content. It's practically impossible for a deaf viewer to see the eyes of the interpreters in such a small frame. Without seeing the face clearly, it is difficult to see important grammatical features necessary to understand the message. An improvement to level 1 accessibility is seen here. The presentation of the interpreter is much larger. The interpreter occupies space equal to the hearing presenter. This shows a shift toward more equitable access. Same space, same prominence, same content. When creating ebooks, sign language dictionaries are important because we know many deaf learners are acquiring language while at the same time trying to learn the curriculum. So dictionaries help support both these tasks. The dictionaries need to be searchable by keywords and thumbnails. The thumbnails will capture the essence of the sign in a photo, providing enough information about the hand shape and position of the sign so the learner should be able to identify the term. For example, in the first photo, you see the hands in front of the body of the signer. You see the English word digestion. You cannot see the movement that goes with the sign, but enough information is presented to help the learner identify the sign they are looking for and to connect it to the English word. This supports the learner who cannot remember the English word, but remembers what they learned and can search using thumbnails. The two researchers looking into effective instructional design for deaf learners considered how video material could be searched. Since no one would want to rewind or fast forward an entire video to find one specific section, the solution is to allow the subtitles to be searchable. Here is a list of phrases and sentences that reflect the subtitles of the video. By clicking on the plus symbol, any one of these phrases can bring the learner to the exact section of the video. Here's where the navigation brought us. You see the text box with the subtitles. You note the text provides short bits of lesson content and that sentence line lengths are short. Once the learner selects the section they wish to watch, they are brought to that specific video segment. It automatically plays and then it closes. There is another way to search for terms, text, and video material separately or in combination. You click, the content opens and closes. The recommended layouts of screen design, including text, images, and video, are not a design feature available in PressBooks. Video must be created and edited outside of PressBooks and then added in. A video editing program can request permission to download any video from the internet. Beside it, an interpreter, either hearing or deaf, can be inserted to provide a translation of the downloaded material. Click and play them at the same time. This can only be done in a video editing program. This task cannot be done with any PressBooks tools. You can achieve many effective design layouts with good quality video editing programs. In this example, we add one more thing. You see the text box for the English, the video, and the image. And now we can add the ASL gloss. As you read it, you will think it's a form of broken English. It's not. Since sign language does not have a written form, this glossing technique has developed to document signed statements on paper. While I mentioned before that video is our paper, sometimes we have to convert ASL to the page. This layout incorporates 4 elements in the design. A good video editing program can allow us to highlight the text as the video lesson proceeds. You can see in this example how the English translation is highlighted inside the border and would correspond to the sign language lesson content. It's a smooth, simultaneous, bilingual representation of the content. Getting back to PressBooks. Once your video is created and edited to your liking, then it can be embedded into PressBooks. This is when you can use PressBooks' fantastic tools to create interactive activities. Here's an example. This man's performance is a personification of a marshmallow being eaten and moving through the digestive tract. He changes between the characterization of the person eating the marshmallow and feeling the ill effects, and the marshmallow itself traveling through the digestive system. This clip shows the marshmallow entering the esophagus. Now we're going to move on to exploring how PressBooks supports Level 2 accessibility. The focus of Level 2 accessibility is supporting bimodal, bilingual language acquisition. The two modalities of speaking and signing, but they are not presented at the same time. No one should be talking and signing at the same time. Because they are two different languages, it is impossible to accurately represent both languages at the same time. Once a deaf learner becomes functionally fluent in their first language, then can they turn their attention to the second language. First and foremost, sign language must be the language of instruction. So back to our initial question. Does PressBooks support Level 2 accessibility? In PressBooks, open educational resources can be generated, shared, reused, revised, or remixed, meaning adding images, text, video, and then redistributed. PressBooks supports H5P generated content. So what does that mean exactly? First, you must understand that H5P is a platform outside of PressBooks. Unlike PressBooks, H5P can use different systems such as Moodle courseware. H5P can be used as a repository of OER content, which means whatever is created in H5P can be easily stored and shared. Another user can access the content, revise and recreate to fit their needs, and again, redistribute, and once again, upload their revised edition to the repository. This creative and generative process can be performed multiple times. The repository option through H5P is a game changer. When I consider all the deaf organizations, deaf educational programs, schools for the deaf, I can see how many needs could be met. I have created H5P content in various ways to address Level 2 accessibility design goals. I wanted to determine if PressBooks could support transferring this content into the ebook. Here's an example. H5P has a branching tool, which allows you to provide your learners with choices. The question here in text is, would you like an ASL explanation of analogy? The student can respond yes or no. If they choose yes, Then the sign language definition of analogy appears on the screen. This exercise is a drag and drop, creating the ASL gloss corresponding to the English sentence. Creating an accurate ASL gloss is not easy. I myself struggle at times. It requires a fluent understanding of both English and ASL. H5P allows you to create matching activities. In this example, we're matching digestive organs to their equivalent analogies. Here's another drag and drop exercise. In this case, completing an English sentence. H5P can support diagram labeling activities through the drag and drop tool. This is another drag and drop activity that I designed using concept mapping. Language acquisition requires the learner to categorize concepts. This exercise reinforces sorting and categorization skills to support language acquisition. Here's another matching exercise working with terminology. Images for the digestive system and images for their analogous functions. H5P has a fill-in-the-blank feature as well. This example of an image slider is used for a preposition exercise. In this case, comparing the ASL gloss become with the English preposition into. This activity allows the learner to toggle between the two positions. The design in the example shows the circle will become the square, and we'll see how it's used in English sentences. In toggle 2, we see the full English sentence. I am now assigning that sentence on the slide in ASL. So the student can toggle back and forth as they please to work through the content. H5P can support writing activities. Lists of phrases, words, or concepts can be created, and the student can be tasked with categorizing or sequencing in a logical order. From this, they would create an organized written passage. I was able to design a number of activities using H5P tools, as you've seen. But I couldn't help but notice that H5P features and options are mainly built to support print language activities. There are far fewer activity options using video. That's a problem. Where are the tools allowing us to link video with text? More and more research is showing how ASL gloss activities support the acquisition of the written forms of spoken languages. Glossing serves as a bridge between the signing and reading. H5P tools can support such activities. Level 3 accessibility focuses on addressing the impact of language deprivation on deaf learners. You may recall from last week that language deprivation in deaf children is a result of a lack of exposure to quality language input. The child's hearing and any technology to support amplification is simply insufficient to perceive spoken language. By the same token, lack of exposure to a sign language means the child's brain is not stimulated with proper language input. So our deaf learner is tasked with acquiring language at the same time as learning the curriculum content. Level 3 accessibility is about providing opportunities for social interaction with many other sign language users. Remember, providing sign language translations does not equate to accessibility for language-deprived learners. They simply may not understand what's being signed. The learner must have a necessary language foundation first. If the learner does not have the necessary language foundation, you can provide as much translated material as you like. They're still not going to understand. So why go to the effort? Level 3 accessibility is where these needs can be addressed, providing the student sign language rich interactive environments to promote language acquisition. Level 3 accessibility strategies include opportunities for supported learning, mentoring, and language scaffolding. Does PressBooks support Level 3 accessibility activities? One approach to promote Level 3 accessibility is through project-based learning. Project-based learning can be a powerful tool in promoting language learning. Working in teams on a project allows students to express themselves and their views, to engage with others. They can discuss the issues they are facing, problem solve. They must engage in the process. It provides a natural, meaningful environment to express themselves and to listen to others. This type of learning exposes the students to multiple communication events, which promotes language learning. This type of exposure to many sign language users is far superior to providing one sign language translation. The key to language acquisition and development is through quality interaction with fluent language users. No matter the language mode, speaking or signing, language acquisition requires constant input from fluent speakers. So the teamwork tool in H5P helps to set up students' roles in the group. How does each member of the team wish to contribute to the project? Some may like to use cameras. Some may like to do the writing. Maybe some like to do interviews. Others may like to draw. So this tool can help with that kind of planning, but unfortunately, it is print-based. This timeline tool of H5P can be used as a planning document. The project could be a storyboard for a movie, a comic book, or any other activity. The tool can help the team plan out all the steps involved. Again, this is in H5P. Online learning has to be grounded in real-world experiences. The learner should not be plunked in front of the computer screen, passively taking in the content. We have to design projects that apply to the real world. You see on the slide a diagram here showing part of the digestive system. It's a card made from paper. This project is a craft. The H5P timeline tool can be used to help with the documentation of the steps of the project. Partway through this instructional video, the question appears, what would you need to make this card? This type of prompt will help encourage conversation among the students. H5P can support participatory reading and remixing. The group of deaf learners can start with a text and then begin to revise it by incorporating text from other passages, introducing new characters, or changing the story in other ways. They pick and choose among stories, movies, or other materials to create something new. This is called remixing. In this example, the material provided to inspire the project is a thumbnail of the interpreter, the digestion card, our marshmallow performer, a blender, and a cartoon icon of a face. The team would be asked to create something new using these materials for inspiration. H5P can support this kind of activity. To summarize, H5P elements favor unimodal and unilingual language and literacy development for spoken and print languages. It is limited in its ability to include video, a real factor to keep in mind. But there's something important I want to show you. The PressBooks hypothesis feature allows for posting sign language video in response to content, whether the content was provided in print or sign language. That allows for interactive activities. That's the kind of thing we need for level 3 accessibility. This is a key pedagogical tool we can exploit in PressBooks. This is the last topic I will cover before closing. Creating an open educational resource is becoming more and more possible, especially in platforms like PressBooks. The technology is getting better, so much better. There are some things that PressBooks cannot support, such as certain courseware or other technologies. We need to guide the development to meet our needs. We need to define a new framework for the design of teaching materials for deaf learners that draws upon the features of the other frameworks discussed last week. When I was creating this ebook, I worked with a hearing interpreter. We are both white, middle-class women. We do not represent the diversity of people reflected in the deaf community. So this ebook is very white. Ideally, it should incorporate the depth of diversity of the community, for example, abilities, race, gender, class, and so on. So I want to acknowledge upfront that my sample does not meet this standard. This ebook is an experiment and is not to be regarded as the standard to follow. I want to emphasize the importance of deaf teachers. I don't mean hearing teachers who work with deaf learners. I am talking about teachers who themselves are deaf and fluent signers, who are socially and culturally connected to the deaf community of their country. Their skills are unique because they share the deaf students' world experience. A signing, hearing teacher can never relate to the students in the same way. and probably never achieves full fluency in the sign language. The same is true for a hearing interpreter. I want to emphasize to you the importance of including deaf teachers. They have years of experience working with deaf children, including many students who came to school language deprived. Deaf teachers would be able to see the effects of language deprivation more clearly than most people would. Indeed, they would see it in their community, not just their classroom. Deaf teachers must be involved in the development of ebooks. I also want to emphasize the necessity of developing sign language curriculums for schools. This material must be incorporated into ebooks. This includes dictionaries of their region's sign language, their sign language corpus, proper instruction of the linguistic features of their sign language. We must draw upon community members as linguistic resources. There is a wealth of research on sign languages around the world. Capitalize on those resources. Include universities and researchers in the development of sign language curriculums. There is a need to increase these resources globally. I want to share with you my vision. Firstly, I am looking to recruit team members who would be interested in testing out this new proposed framework. Part of the work will be creating a more comprehensive ebook, which incorporates more examples and activities, expanded lesson plans, with better diversity representation. I am looking to use the talents of deaf signers, deaf artists, deaf filmmakers, deaf production staff, and so on to be involved in the design. Secondly, I would like to explore how the use of international sign might facilitate translations into other nations' sign languages. To be clear, there is no international sign language. World Deaf leaders have developed a contact sign system called International Sign. Based on borrowing vocabulary from sign languages around the world, this contact system of communication was developed. It does not have deep grammatical features and does incorporate gesture. But it might be sufficient to relay the ebook content well enough for deaf teams and supporters in other countries to translate it into the richness of their own sign language. We would not expect international sign to be used for instruction in the ebook. The use of international sign would just be the middle step in the translation process. Once the ebook was translated into multiple sign languages, we would want to go out into the communities and pilot it. We would be looking to evaluate it from the perspective of deaf students, deaf adults, researchers, and other stakeholders to determine effectiveness, fit, and appropriateness. Were educational outcomes such as reading, sign language acquisition, spoken language acquisition improved for the deaf learners? These are just some of the questions we wish to pursue. The third part of the project would be developing ongoing partnerships among countries to provide training and the necessary infrastructure so that they can access the OER repository and begin translating, revising, and redeveloping the resources to meet the needs of their deaf learners, which in turn can be deposited into the repository for other countries to adapt. Let's go back to PressBooks. I have to admit, it is a promising platform, in large part because it supports H5P generated content. It supports open educational resources. I believe it will be an important tool in the future of education. Functions that could be improved apply mostly to video creation, including search functions and incorporating H5P features and layout options, to name a few. But it's a good start. As we know, technology will only get better. However, our most important tool is the theoretical framework that will guide the design and the technology when developing open educational resources. Thank you for listening to my presentation.
Professor Weber, thank you very much for sharing your work and for presenting us with a different and necessary work horizon. This couple of weeks, you presented a global vision, and now you presented us with an accessible work option, PressBooks as a grounded version of everything you have presented. So I hope we're gonna have a lot of comments and questions, but while we're waiting for them, I want to remind the audience that the attendance record is placed in the video description, and it is important for you to fill it out to obtain your certificate. I invite you to put on the chat box your questions and comments for the professor, because I think this is the best way to enrich the lecture. I think that while we wait, I want to ask you something. For example, in my institution, we haven't had any kind of experience. What do you think is the best approach to begin with, to work with deaf students or deaf with a deaf community?
Well, the best way would be to make overtures to the deaf community through probably you have the formal organizations. We also have the World Federation of the Deaf. And so that we call it WFD in English. They have connections in every country with all many deaf organizations. And they're involved in a number of projects throughout the world. And I know for sure there are activities in Mexico with the deaf communities there. I also know they have work in Finland. So I would start by reaching out to the World Federation of the Deaf and see what connections they have. I know Brazil is another place where they have strong connections with the community and efforts going on with projects there. So I would start with the World Federation of the Deaf. You can find them on the internet easily and reach out to them.
Thank you very much, Professor, because I saw last week that a lot of people were saying that their institutions haven't had any kind of experience, and sometimes it is difficult to start. And then from there, you can create a lot of things.
I think one of the big issues is probably literacy, language, reading and writing, the spoken language of your countries. Are the students graduating at a high school level, um, compatible with your hearing graduates? I bet they're not. I bet they're having that same experience of graduating with grade 4 or 5. And I know that the numbers of academics is growing, deaf academics is growing, but if you're not getting back to the original education, then the students just can't keep up.
Thank you. And now we're starting with the comments and the questions. Norita says, good morning. Is a license required to use PressBooks?
Good question, Rita. Um, the universities or the libraries have a license agreement. And because I work at the university, I'm under their license agreement. So you can, and it's through our library services. So I have the full authority to create content with their support. And so there's still some questions around copyright using books and things like that, but often if you can work through the university or your library who has PressBooks, and once you do that, everything is free for any of the users. But you do need to work through, like I said in my presentation, whoever are the contract holders with PressBooks. And so in our case, it's University Library Services. They pay to manage PressBooks. And so you need to work with someone like that, because you wouldn't want to have the license agreement with yourself as an individual, I would think, because there's a lot of management in the background. But you can, once you're connected to a PressBooks owner, you can then start creating.
Thank you very much. I hope we have many more comments and questions. Norita G also says, could you recommend a virtual workshop course to learn sign languages? And thank you very much for the information.
Well, learning sign language, well, first of all, you would want to find the sign language used in your region or your country. So I'm assuming you're from Mexico. So I don't know what's available there. I don't know what's online. But again, that's probably something that you can find out from the World Federation of the Deaf, from their website. And they might have recommendations there of organizations that might run this kind of class, so, or workshops. But it's learning a language, so it's lifelong, right? It's not just one course.
Exactly. You have presented us a whole new vision, a whole new challenge for everyone in the institutions, in the universities. And Ana Meneses says, I am very interested in learning more about accessibility in audiovisuals for education, especially with deaf students. You can reference where to continue inquiring. Can you recommend where to look?
Well, to be honest with you, the research in the area is very limited, and we are technology dependent. So many of the solutions are in terms of options for audiovisuals, depend on the platform. And so I've been focusing on open education resources, and some of those features are not really well suited for deaf learners. But there are some resources out there, but that provide this kind of information, but you have to pay for it. So that's why we're trying to get this information out there, like with my last week and this week's information, in an open educational resource option. So you've gotten some examples through my work here in terms of linking up text and video and those kinds of things. But we're still doing a lot of the research, and then again working with some of the functionality, like the searches and the navigation and using thumbnails and things like that. So we have some tools, and you'll see from my ebook if you open it up, but that's all been working through PressBooks. So instead of using the old-fashioned way, we just have to move forward and be more accessible.
Thank you very much. The Open Social Lab says, Dear Joanne, greetings. From Maria Soledad Ramirez Montoya from Tecnológico de Monterrey. It is a pleasure to learn with you. Thank you for you too. For your two webinars. Please, a question. What are your recommendations for the open education movement to keep growing in inclusive education practices, especially in learning for deaf students?
Okay, I think we have two main problems. One is still technology. Things are getting better. They are getting better, but they're not where they need to be. But the other issue is the infrastructure. We need more networks. We need more partnerships. We need more people involved in the research. So right now, we are trying to get these partnerships going. We need to network with the community deaf organizations. We need to, if we want to be accessible, we have to partner with the deaf people because they understand what's going on. Hearing experts who are going in the wrong direction, we need to include the deaf people. And that's where we're limited. And of course, where's the funding? Where's the money? Right? We're always looking at those kinds of things. So that's why I was proposing a multi-country liaison, starting, I'm in Canada, but maybe partnering with a number of countries, including the Caribbean countries. I do have one contact in the Caribbean, and we're going to look at doing what I said in the conclusion of my presentation. Trying to get these open education resources out there, get these partnerships established, and try and reach out to the deaf learners and the deaf teachers. And your support in that would be fabulous.
Thank you very much. Gloria Tenorio says, PressBooks offer reading responses in Mexican sign languages. In sign language, I'm starting to work with an association for the deaf, but we always have interpreters who support us.
So bimodal, bilingual education means going from the written or spoken language and into the sign language, right? So you can do in PressBooks, you can do reading responses in Mexican Sign Language and the print language. Remember that hypothesis feature I talked about in my presentation? So you would create the content and the students would read the print content, and then they would make a movie themselves translating that or responding to it in some way. And then that movie that the student created could also be distributed to other students and they would create a response. So you're working with both languages and hopefully they're acquiring both languages. But it can be done. You just have to create the content.
Mariana Ayala says, is there a Spanish speaking group that is working on making material in PressBooks?
No, that was one of my first contacts was with you in terms of a Mexican or Spanish speaking audience. So I'm not sure. Probably if you can't reach out to PressBooks, reach out to your university libraries or your public libraries and see where PressBooks has a license. And maybe there's a better platform, but I'm using that one because it's available through the university. I'm not quite clear on what other open education platforms are out there. But whatever we do, I want to make sure it's on open education platforms, right? We don't need to have our resources locked off. And that's key. That's key that we continue in this OER realm, which of course one is all about.
Thank you. Now Maria Carmona Flores is asking, regarding the answer to question number 3 of the attendance record, it is very important, no, 11 is very important and one is less important or vice versa. Which one is more important? Where do they have to start?
It's really your opinion. I'm asking for your opinion. You tell me what you view as what is more important and less important. I'm just looking for your responses. I'm interested in your responses. What are people thinking out there is the most important or the least important?
I think
And in terms of what you think should happen going forward too.
I think that what Maria was trying to ask is that if you consider the one as the most important or 11.
Oh,
Okay. I thought it was more of an ordering, like an ordering of from 1 to 11. So 1 would be the most important, what you consider the priority, and then 11, the last thing you would want to deal with. Yeah, priority. Thank you for clarifying. Yeah, number 1 of the priorities would be the most important.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Now, Angelica Martinez is asking, do you think is there a need to develop open educational resources in the private initiative? If you do you think the market is bigger in English or Spanish need?
I I think one thing to keep in mind if we're talking about the deaf population, it's just important that the end users don't pay. I'm not sure who would support your development, maybe the government, maybe other school boards, maybe that kind of thing. If you do it on a private um, basis, what are your partnerships in the community so at least the end users are not paying? Right? Because we want to make sure the families who might be wanting to learn this sign language, the students, even the teachers, uh, it's just I think there may be a market out there for sure in English. I don't know about Spanish. I can't really say myself. It's worth investigating as long as we have the goals of OER in mind.
Thank you very much, Professor. We are really thankful for everything you have shared and for opening our vision. And I hope that a new partnership can be initiated out of this talk because I see a lot of people interested in working with these communities, but now you gave us a lot of tools. And I hope to hear from you soon.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate the invitation, and I felt very honored that you included me. I do hope we have partnerships moving forward with you and with others who are listening. Please reach out. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much and have a nice day. Yeah. A good week.
The same to you. Bye now.
Bye.